You're welcome in advance. I marathoned so many series this month. I loved it. And at one point, a love square that I did not love very much. It made it sound cheesy and corny and not realistic to me. Hi friends, and welcome back to my channel. So today, as you can tell, we are talking about all the books that I read in the month of June. I read 18 in June, but we have to talk about 19 because I forgot one in my 27 book wrap up. It was the last book that I read in April, and I thought that I read it in May. So we're going to talk about it in this video so that I can have every video that I've read this year talked about in a wrap up on my channel. All right. So, the last book that I read in April was Orochi by Kazuo Omez. I believe this is the first book in maybe like a trilogy or a multi-installment series where we're getting 3 different bind-ups. That's what I've seen on Goodreads, that there are 3 of these editions, but each one has multiple stories, as this one did. This one is a horror manga, and I was looking to branch out for more horror manga outside of Junji Ito, which was why I picked this one up. I looked at it for such a long time before I finally decided to pick this one up, and it was definitely very creepy, definitely delivered on the horror. Unfortunately, it is not the horror that I tend to enjoy. I don't love children being hurt as the result of the horrific events. Like, I guess if it's a mass thing, it kind of makes sense, but if we're taking it out on the child in order to torture somebody else, that doesn't sit very well with me, and that happened in, I think, the second story of this one. So I enjoyed the stories themselves outside of that aspect. Obviously, the first one was kind of boring to me, if I remember correctly, and the last one that I read is the one that had that element in it. From what I remember, I read it over a month ago, but because of that, I gave this a 3 stars. I am willing to continue on and read more of these, but that's just why I gave this one the rating that I did. Moving on to the actual books that I read in the month of June, we're going to talk about these in kind of series sections because I marathoned so many series this month. It was kind of intense, if I'm going to be honest. I don't regret a thing, but that's why we're gonna kind of section this video off into the different series that I've read, and then if there are any remaining standalones, I'll do that at the end of the video as opposed to going in order of what I read chronologically. So with that being said, we will start with the series that I think I read 8 books of this month, and that is the Spellbound series by Annabelle Chase. So I read book 1 because I saw it in an Olivia Reads a Latte reading vlog, and I love her cozy mystery recommendations, and I was looking for more. She said this one definitely gave her like Halloween Town vibes, and I only saw that movie for the very first time with Shelby from Grace with Books. I think like in 2020 or maybe even 2021. It was the first time I had ever seen it, and I loved it. So I wanted something similar to that, which made me pick up Curse the Day, which is the first book. I think I gave this like a 4 or a 5 out of 5 stars. It's obviously not a perfect book. It's not like completely heartbreaking. It doesn't take me on like a roller coaster of emotions. None of the books in this series do, but I still really enjoyed it, and it is one of the better cozy mysteries that I've read, so definitely a higher rating for me. I would say that this entire series is like a 3.75 out of 5 stars, if not some of them definitely up to a 4. But the one book in the series that I distinctly remember very much disliking and giving a lower rating, and I think at the time I rated it like a 3, but it's honestly probably like a 2.5, was Lucky Charm. This is the 4th book in the series. So the other ones all follow like a murder or someone being hurt, and maybe it's terrible of me to say that I found this one boring because it was like there was a spell on someone and it was like a love potion or something like that, something stupid that I was so bored with. It was just boring. I didn't like it. It wasn't anything creative to me, and I'm happy to report that the other ones since then have not done that. I guess I'll just start by saying what book 1 is about. So we are following our main character, Emma Hart, and she is a lawyer. She's on her way to this client meeting when the book starts, and she's running very late. But on her way there, she sees this guy standing at the edge of a cliff, and she thinks he's about to jump and unalive himself. So she pulls over. She's like, hey, don't do that. And one thing leads to another. She ends up falling off the cliff. He's a fallen angel, so he swoops up and grabs her. He's like, I wasn't gonna do that. Like, I have wings. That doesn't even make sense as my method, even though that's definitely what he was about to do. He admits to it later. I'm not just assuming that. There's a curse on this town that Daniel, the fallen angel, lives in, where the residents are not allowed to leave, and if you are a paranormal creature and you stumble into this town, you will be stuck there as well. And so Emma is like, can you please like get me back to my car? He's like, I couldn't even if I wanted to. It just fell into the lake, and also I can't leave this town, so you kind of have to swim your way to shore. So she goes to cross the boundary of this town, and she can't leave, which is how she ends up finding out that she is actually a witch. The story takes place from there. She ends up being the town, essentially like the district attorney for this town. I can't remember what it's called, but because she's a lawyer, she takes that job up because she needs a job, and she also takes up residence in this house of the former district attorney, because I can't remember his actual title, in this town because he recently passed away, and then she ends up like solving his murder, I think. So that's where book 1 starts, and there is an overarching plot that goes through all of the books. You find out like where Emma really came from and why she was in the human realm for so long. There's a love triangle, and at one point a love square that I did not love very much, but by book 8 that portion has resolved itself in a way that I am very pleased with. There are 10 books in the series, and I managed to read 8 of them this month, and I would have to say that my least favorite was book 4, like I mentioned, and my favorite might have been book 5 or 6. I can't remember. I'll link the reading vlog where I read like 7 of them in a week down below for you, so that you can kind of catch up on my journey with those and get my thoughts as I'm reading them. That is the first series that I wanted to kind of talk to you guys about. The next series that I don't want to go too in depth with because I have a separate video coming out for it, and once it's posted I'll have it linked in the description below. If it's already up by the time you're seeing this video, I'll have it in the description below already, is the Brutal Birthright series. In April I read the first book, and in May, I'm in June right now, or we're talking about May. I don't know if I said June or not when I was talking about the last series, but I meant May. I'm just confused because we're like a week into June. In May, I managed to read books 2 through 4, and I'm in the middle of book 5, so I read 3 of them. I read Stolen Heir, 2 stars. Did not like this one. It's a Beauty and the Beast captive romance, and I didn't like it. I just felt like it leaned too heavily into the Beauty and the Beast original story, or at least the Disney version, and I didn't like it at all. It took me so long to go through, and I almost DNF'd this entire series just because of this one book. And then I read Savage Lover, which is the 3rd book. This is Nero and Camille's story, and I gave this one a 5 out of 5 stars. This is my favorite so far that I have read in the series. It is so freaking good. I would honestly read the books just so you can read this. This is a bad boy romance with a heist in it, which I have not read a heist in a romance before, and I may have not even ever read a heist story before, so this was very fun as my debut into that. And I know that there are plenty of fantasies that I have on my shelves with heist stories, and I intend to get to them, but this was very fun. I loved it. Yeah, Nero is my favorite Gallo sibling, and I loved all of the mafia stuff in this one. I just thought it was chef's kiss, amazing. I read it in 2 days. It was perfect. Then I read book 4, which is Bloody Heart. This is Dante and Simone's story, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I went in not expecting to care about this one, and really not expecting to even like it that much, more of like a Stolen Heir kind of vibe, just because I was excited for Stolen Heir, even though we didn't know Mikolaj like prior, and we knew very little about Nessa, and I was excited for that one and I ended up hating it. So this one I was very, very on the fence about because we had met Dante, but he came off very like brute-ish, and we had heard that he had had a lover in the past. This has the hidden baby trope, just so you know, that is a part of it. I really, really liked this one. This is probably a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Simone is a supermodel. She is gorgeous and such like a gangster, honestly. Like, not she's not part of a gang or the mafia, not a gangster in the literal sense of the word, but just like how badass she is. So freaking cool. I loved this. And I loved seeing the like sentimental side of Dante and the emotional side and all of their thought processes. It definitely wasn't my favorite, obviously, but I came out loving Dante and Simone more than I really expected to. So I was very appreciative for my reading experience and how well Sophie Lark did this story. And if you're concerned, you like the first half or so of the book is Dante and Simone's backstory, and then you fast forward to present day, like 9 years later, I think. Very good. You get both kind of sides of the story. Like, you get both sides because all these books are told in dual POV, but also like both sides of their story, the history and the present slash future type of thing. So yes, enjoying my experience with this. I'm halfway through book 5 and having a good time. Moving on to a manga series that I found and adored in the month of May. Blue Flag. I have the first 4 volumes here. This is what I read in May. These first 3 were all 5 stars. I think this one is maybe more like a 4. So basically, I had seen Blue Flag quite a bit like in the bookstore and stuff, and then I heard Hannah from A Clockwork Reader talk about it, and she said that it was very similar to Heartstopper thematically, and so I was like, okay, game on, absolutely picking this up. Plus, I knew Pride Month was coming up, so I had every intent to wait until June, and that just did not happen, obviously. I still have I have 2 more volumes on my shelves to read, so like I'm still reading it for Pride Month, but basically, in this book, we have 2 friends, Toma and Taichi, I think is how you pronounce his name, or Taichi, I'm not sure. Please correct me in the comments if one of those is correct. If one of those is correct or if they're both wrong. Basically, the book starts with Futaba, who has a massive crush on Toma, approaches Taichi and says, I have a massive crush on Toma, can you please help me become his perfect type so that I can like get his attention and he can fall in love with me. Which is how I feel like so many manga stories that I read start, and I like don't love that trope because you shouldn't change yourself to get the attention of a guy, but also I was in high school once and I definitely did that, so I get it. It's very relatable in that regard. And so he's like, I mean, yeah, I guess, but this is a weird request. I don't know why you're asking me. So through the course of the book, they become closer, and he's like trying to help her, given the list that Toma gave him when they were in like 6th grade of aspects he likes in women. And you come to find, I'm not going to spoil it. I'm not going to spoil the series, but you also end up getting Toma's perspective as well as a friend of Futaba's, so there is like a core 4 of friends, and it's kind of a found family trope, and I freaking loved it. It is so sweet, and once you finish, I think it's volume 1, but it might be volume 2, it just becomes so heartbreaking. The things that these characters are experiencing, it totally broke my heart, and all of the pining that's happening, it's like so messy, but not in a way that it's like soap opera-y. It's just very teen, I like them but they like somebody else kind of thing. It's just, yes, absolutely yes, 100%. And honestly, like, this is, I feel like, my book of the moment. You need to go read this as quickly as possible. Like, run, don't walk. If you're looking for a manga recommendation or you've never read manga before, this is honestly a great one to start with. 10 out of 10 recommend, and it's a great one for Pride Month. There are like 9 or 10 volumes out in English right now, so you have so much content to just fly through while the other ones continue to come out. You're welcome in advance. All right, and then I have 3 other books that I read as standalones in the month of May that I also loved. So before I read Blue Flag, I fell in love with another book, and that was actually a graphic novel. Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me by Rosemary Valero O'Connell and Mariko Tamaki. So I had seen this everywhere for quite a while, and I had always been intrigued by it. I had heard that this one is kind of about a toxic relationship. We are following our main character, Freddie, who has been in this on-again, off-again relationship with Laura Dean, who is one of the coolest girls in school, and for whatever reason, Laura Dean is attracted to her and like recognized her even though she wasn't the most popular. It's about the cycle of their relationship and the emotional abuse that goes on even on both parties and outside of the relationship from the people that are in the relationship, because they're going through a lot. Maybe they're not treating the people that are trying to support them in this relationship and just in life as well as they should be. This absolutely broke my heart. I think it had me tearing up at points. It is a lot, and you should definitely look up content warnings before going into this one. Art style and the story and the message that you don't always have to not be in love with someone in order to break up with them. It was just so beautifully done, and I think that this sends a message, not necessarily sends a message in like a subtle way because it's very direct and not trying to hide the fact that it's telling you something, but I think that this would be a really good book for anyone in like a high school and early 20s trying to figure out what relationships are supposed to be like and what a healthy relationship doesn't look like. And how if you're in an unhealthy relationship, you can kind of take the pressure and the effects of that out on the other people in your life without even realizing or meaning to do it. I loved this book. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. It is one of my favorite graphic novels that I've ever read, and definitely one of my favorite books that I have read so far this year, and I will definitely be rereading it. I plan to reread it this month for Pride Month. It was beautiful. Then moving on to a romance that I read on audiobook, we have Made in Manhattan by Lauren Lane. This is one of my favorite, if not my favorite, Lauren Lane book that I have read to date. I have always said that Lauren Lane writes less smutty romances, but this one had one scene, so if you've gone by that recommendation before, just be aware of that. There is one scene, it's over pretty quickly. That sounded like I was talking poorly. Whoopsie. There is one scene in this book, and it doesn't last a super long time. It's not pages and pages and pages of smut, so if you are trying to avoid that, I still think that this leans on the like less intense side of that, or if you're just delving into the realm of smut, this would be maybe like a good entryway for you so that you're not overwhelmed. But basically we have our main character, I'm sorry, I don't remember their names at all, but our main female character has lived in Manhattan for most of her life, and her job is to take care of this elderly woman, and in exchange this elderly woman like pays her, but she has this huge long business, and it has been kind of unspoken that when she dies, potentially the business will go to like her caretaker, our main character. But one day our main character shows up to this older woman's apartment, and she has a grandson there who is meant to take over the business once she has kind of like written it off, and they're like transitioning so that she can still be alive while the business is being taken over in case there are any questions or legalities or anything, and he's not completely left in the dark with it. And it's kind of a slap in the face to our main character who has taken care of this woman her whole life, and then this random grandson pops up out of nowhere, this random long lost heir. She is given the task of kind of making him in Manhattan so that he knows how to talk to all these people and network and all of those things, because he grew up in the South and he's not used to like this city lifestyle. So she has to teach him how to dress, and the board wants him to get a haircut and things like that, and change the way that he speaks because it's a little bit gruff. And I didn't love the message that the book was sending for the first little bit, but at the end it kind of changes its tune. So if that's something that makes you uncomfortable, that's not the whole message that the book is sending, that you need to change yourself, which is really what I've been hating lately. Like, don't change yourself for anybody. That's stupid. Don't do that. It changes its tune, which made me feel a lot better about reading this and liking it, because the romance in this was so good, and the fact that we got one payoff scene was even better. I loved it. But yes, I loved this romance. 4.5 out of 5 stars. It was so sweet, and all of the build-up and tension, enemies to lovers, kind of hate to love vibe. It was so good. 10 out of 10. I mean, not 10 out of 10, like a 9.5 out of 10. 9 out of 10, I guess. That's what 4.5 times 2 is. So, all right, and the last book for this video, Counting Down With You by Tashi Bhuiyan. I've been meaning to pick it up for such a long time, but then Tashi Bhuiyan's sophomore novel, A Show for Two, came out, and I was like, okay, it's finally time to read her first book. So I picked it up, and I think that this one is like a 4.75 out of 5 stars would be my rating, but I also didn't love the audiobook. Not that the narrator was doing a terrible job narrating or that there was a weird pace or anything. It was the way that they chose to put emphasis on certain parts of the sentence. Like, I just wouldn't have put the same inflection there if I was reading it like to myself. So I didn't like that. It made it sound cheesy and corny and not realistic to me. Didn't love the inflection of her words, and that's such a nitpicky thing, but it did really take me out of the story. So I would not recommend the audiobook for this one. I would honestly recommend reading it physically. But this was such a cute story. We have our main character, Karina, and her love interest's name is Ace. At least I remember these characters' names. Karina, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Karina is Bengali, and her parents go away to visit her mother's side of the family in Bangladesh, and they're gone for a month. And while they're gone, Karina and her brother are being watched over by her grandmother. While her parents are away, she is asked by her English teacher to tutor this boy named Ace. He's one of the most popular boys in her grade. He's super rich, has the bad boy vibe, even though he's not really a bad boy, and he needs some help in English. So in exchange for tutoring this boy, Karina's English teacher will waive the end of the year project that she has to do. So she says, okay, I'll do it. This book, yes, it was obviously a romance. It was a cute young adult contemporary romance, but it was also talking about standing up for yourself and what you believe in, and straying away from your parents if it's not really what makes you happy, just for the sake of making them happy, which I know is not easy for everybody, and I'm not trying to insinuate that it is. I loved the courage that Karina showed, and that she kind of had to pick and choose her battles, because that is reality. Like, you don't always get your way when you're talking to your parents and you want something, and I fully get that, and I understand that every culture is different. So I'm not trying to claim that I know Karina's struggles fully. Standing up to her parents about hanging out with a boy who is white, and hanging out with her friends on the weekend that do get good grades and are good students, going to college for the degree that she wants, because she can make a career out of English when her parents want her to be a doctor. Karina is constantly butting heads with her parents about hanging out with Ace when it was something that her teacher asked her to do, and wanting to go to college for an English degree as opposed to a biology degree and becoming a doctor like her parents want, and things like that. And I loved the relationship, not only between Ace and Karina, which was very sweet and heartwarming. I definitely did love that aspect, but more than that, I loved the relationship between Karina and her daddy, or grandmother, because her grandmother was there 110% of the time to back her up and ask her what she wanted and remind her that it was okay. This book also had some really wonderful anxiety representation that I loved in it, and showed different coping mechanisms throughout. And what's more is I loved that not all of them worked for Karina, not for the sake of Karina being anxious, but just the fact that it is such a realistic portrayal, and there are so many anxiety coping mechanisms on the internet, but not all of them are going to work for you, but that doesn't mean that you should give up on trying them. I really, really loved this book. It definitely is a new favorite young adult contemporary. It was the first that I've read in a while, so I was kind of nervous because I've been so used to reading adult romance for such a long time, but I'm so glad that I read it, and I will for sure be reading a shelf or two very, very soon, especially because it was kind of inspired by Tom Holland. I just have to read it ASAP. Those were the 18 books that I read in the month of May, plus the one that I read at the end of April and forgot to put in that video. Aslan wants me to go now, so I have to do that, unfortunately. But thank you all so much for watching this video. I really hope that you guys enjoyed it. I really hope you're doing well reading mentally and otherwise, and I really hope to see you all in my next video. Bye, guys.